Thank the gentleman. Pursuant to notice, I call up H.R. 4638, the BOWOW Act, for purpose of markup, and move that the committee report in favor to the House. The clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 4638.
Without objection, the bill be considered as read and open for amendment at any point. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. McClintock, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hope you'll all have a chance to meet Freddie the Beagle, who's, I think, in the anteroom right now. Freddie's a 5-year-old CBP detection dog who serves our country every day, along with his handler agent, Melissa D. Snyder. Freddie was found abandoned as a puppy at the side of a Georgia road. He was adopted into the USDA's Detector Dog program. He's since conducted over 590,000 searches, resulting in nearly 2,000 seizures of prohibited agricultural products attempting to be brought into the country. These dogs are highly trained to alert if they smell contraband being smuggled across our nation's ports of entry. To them, it's a playtime game, but they're the most efficient and unobtrusive system we have to secure busy airports. Now, on June 24th of this year, Freddie and Melissa were working Dulles International Airport. On that day, Freddie alerted to luggage on a flight coming from Egypt. While Agent Snyder questioned the owner, this man violently kicked Freddie with sufficient force to lift Freddie off the ground. Freddie suffered contusions to his right forward rib area. He was taken off duty for 2 weeks to recover. And there they are, by the way. Be sure to say hi. It turns out this man was smuggling 117 pounds of meat and produce which were prohibited from entering the United States. Well, he pled guilty to harming an animal used in law enforcement. He was deported to Egypt 2 days later. He will never be allowed back in our country again unless, of course, another Joe Biden becomes president. Now, that same month, leftist protesters in Los Angeles physically attacked horses used by the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department for crowd control during an anti-ICE riot. Horses are used extensively by federal agencies for crowd control and also for access to remote areas along the border frequented by human and drug traffickers. So Congressman Calvert brings us this simple bill that says that if you are convicted of harming a law enforcement animal or you admit to doing so, while you are a guest of our country, you will immediately be expelled and never allowed to return. Yes, it is true that we have good laws to punish such animal cruelty, and yes, such assaults can be defined as moral turpitude to bar admission, but that finding can often require Byzantine legal proceedings. They'd eat up valuable time and resources if they're pursued at all. Now, I know that many of our Democratic colleagues support the open border policies of the Biden administration, which encouraged the largest illegal mass migration in history. They admitted the world's most violent criminal gangs and cartels into our communities. They suppressed American workers' wages, and they cost taxpayers an estimated $160 billion a year to support. I know that many are now vigorously, and in some cases violently, opposing the enforcement of our immigration laws under the Trump administration. They can't change these laws, so they seek to obstruct their enforcement and attack and harass and threaten the law enforcement officers who are upholding them. Some Democratic state and local officials have even revived the disgraced doctrine of nullification to defy federal law that we all thought had died with the Confederacy. Now, this is a deep and irreconcilable divide between our parties that only voters can ultimately resolve. But can't we at least all agree that kicking a 5-year-old beagle at an airport should disqualify any foreign national from entering our country ever again? That's the entire one-paragraph law, and I hope we can put aside our political differences and all support it. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the ranking member, Mr. Raskin, for an opening statement.
And thank you kindly, Mr. Chairman. As co-chair of the Animal Protection Caucus and a huge dog person, I think I counted 7 in our extended family this morning. I've taken a strong interest in this bill and the case underlying it. The case indeed illustrates the cavalier violent abuse of animals that's still pervasive in our country, around the world. Alas, the bill is a great example of a trend that I think both sides have tried to resist, which is duplicating existing offenses and simply filling the statute books with redundant provisions. It all started, as the gentleman said, when K-9 Detective Freddie the Beagle, who we get to meet today, who was working with Customs and Border Protection, detected smuggled agricultural products at Dulles Airport. Apparently, he repeatedly barked and alerted his commanding officers to the presence of over 100 pounds of prohibited food items in bags unloading in the luggage pickup area. And the prohibited food belonged to Hamed Ramadan Bayoumi Ali Marie, age 70, a traveler and a foreign national visiting from Egypt. So this gentleman, apparently frustrated and angry over the dog's excellent detective work, kicked Freddie so hard he became airborne and suffered bruised ribs. And if you're an animal lover like me, you would exclaim, that should be illegal. And sure enough, it was illegal. Mr. Marie was promptly arrested, held by the police for several days, and then he pled guilty to one count of harming animals used in law enforcement under 18 U.S.C. 1368. He was convicted, and he was sentenced to time served by the judge, ordered to pay the veterinarian's bill, which records show was $840. I'm glad to see that Freddie is doing fine. And then he was promptly, Mr. Marie was promptly deported and sent back to Egypt. So, as the case itself demonstrates, the conduct is already criminally proscribed and is the basis for removal of a non-citizen. It's against the law now to kick a police dog, and Mr. Marie won himself 3 days in jail for doing it. But the opportunity to introduce a redundant bill is apparently impossible for us politicians to pass up. H.R. 4638 would render inadmissible and deportable any non-citizen who willfully harms a police dog or a police horse. I'm unaware of any mad rush of immigrants roaming the country and attacking police animals, so I'm not sure what crisis this surplus language is responding to. I don't know if it's about horses being bootstrapped in. I'm sure anyone attacking a horse would also be swept under the current statute. In any event, what should have happened here did happen here. Mr. Marie was criminally charged, prosecuted, convicted, and removed from the country. In other words, the criminal justice system, the immigration system worked just like they're supposed to. A foreign national committed a crime. He was arrested, charged, prosecuted, convicted, and removed, all without being stripped of any of the due process protections that we afford people in America. So all this bill really does is short-circuit the need to actually prosecute someone for an alleged assault. The bill would render not just a vacation traveler, but even a green card holder deportable for kicking a police animal, even if he or she is never arrested, charged, prosecuted, or convicted of the crime. Now think of that. That's what this bill is doing. It is short-circuiting the entire process which took place in this actual case. So there's no crime so serious that people don't actually have to be prosecuted for it before being punished. If a citizen or a green card holder murders someone today, we require that they be convicted prior to being sent to prison or to being rendered deportable. There must be an actual conviction. If this bill were to become law, individuals accused of attacking police animals will be treated in the immigration system more harshly than people accused of murdering a human being. That just makes no sense. And it sticks out like a sore thumb in our statute books. Under the INA, a non-citizen convicted of a crime involving moral turpitude, or CIMT, is automatically deportable. And the gentleman has conceded that this was treated as a crime of moral turpitude and can be treated that way. There are a wide variety of these offenses, including acts to impede law enforcement and to harm animals. The key point here is that only persons who are convicted of such a crime are rendered deportable. This bill eliminates the conviction requirement, which is a very dangerous road for us to go down. And I know that the Homeland Security Secretary, Noem, infamously in her book, bragged about killing her dog, but she should not be fired or punished for that with all the protections of due process, even though she wrote about having done it. If she were to be prosecuted for that, that's something that she should actually be brought to court for and not simply say, oh, there's evidence of it, she's admitted it. I urge members to oppose this bill, and I yield back.
Without objection, all of their opening statements will be included in the record. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from California to offer an amendment in the nature of a substitute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment in the nature.
Without objection, the amendment in the nature of a substitute will be considered as read and shall be considered base text for the purposes of amendment. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from California to explain his amendment.
Thank you. This amendment just makes a small technical change to the short title. It doesn't change the substance of the bill, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Who seeks recognition?
I have an amendment at the desk.
Gentleman from New York has an amendment. Gentleman may, or excuse me, the clerk may report.
I have reserved report.
Point of order reserved by the gentleman from California.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 4638, offered by Mr. Goldman of New York. Page 1, strike lines.
Without objection, the amendment will be considered as read. The gentleman from New York is recognized to explain his amendment.
Well, let me read it, please, if I may. It's page 1, strike lines 2 through 4, and insert the following. This act may be cited as the Christie Nome Canine Relief Act of 2025. It is noteworthy that we are doubling down on deporting, arresting individuals who assault dogs in this case. And make no mistake, I am strongly against anyone assaulting dogs. And I think the ranking member laid out very clearly the problem with this bill. But I really want to know how, if at all, it would apply to cabinet members who have admitted that they have shot and killed a dog. Is it only at the ports of entry, or is this just broadly against any assault on dogs? Because my understanding from reading the bill is that this would apply to someone who kills a dog. Now, obviously, we're focused here on the deportation of people who kill dogs, and presumably that would not apply to U.S. citizens, although I understand my colleagues on the other side are in many cases trying to denaturalize people. But certainly the Secretary of Homeland Security, as a born American subject to birthright citizenship, would not be able to be denaturalized. So I understand that this bill would not necessarily apply because it is really focused on making sure that we double down and deport not just people who are convicted of killing dogs, but people who have been alleged to have killed dogs. And so this renaming, I think, would really capture the true essence of the bill, which is that we really don't want anybody to kill dogs, especially the Secretary of Homeland Security. And so I would urge my colleagues to support this amendment that would rename the bill the Christie Nome Canine Relief Act of 2025. And I yield back.
Mr. Chairman,
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from California.
I would insist on my point of order because of the nature of the amendment, but since I've been told that it is technically in order, I would rather say, can I please call the previous question and dispense with this? No?
Can you also, can maybe,
Okay.
can maybe you say
I'll
that you're
strike-
against,
I'd like to
can you
strike-
say you're against the amendment?
I'd like to
Can you do
strike
that?
the last word, Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Chairman, the word kill, I'm looking for it in the bill. The word Christie Nome is being injected by the other side. This is about, in fact, a difference between many of us on the right and many on the left, which is, do people at the time of their request to enter the country or during their stay as visa holders, do they have the same right against being deported that American citizens have? And the answer obviously is no. And I think the gentleman wisely said, citizens are not to be deported. However, a visa or a visa at the port of entry when you're attempting to enter, particularly carrying drugs as this person did. And I only question why he isn't still in jail rather than having been deported.
Ag produce.
Pardon me? Oh, okay. It wasn't drugs. I apologize. But the fact is, this is an example of the difference between the two views. The view that everyone has a right to be here with or without a visa, with or without good conduct. It is clear that this is necessary for the very reason of the argument by my colleague, is he is arguing that somehow, we don't need this law. We need the law if there's ambiguity as to whether or not your entry into the country is at the discretion of the United States government based on your clear living up to the standards for which we have granted that entry. And the standards for granting that entry are higher than just a question of breaking the law. And I think that's the important point, that if you want to say that you have to, as has been said in this committee repeatedly, you have to do egregious things. I remember markups in this committee where we said, if you have been convicted of driving under the influence 100 times, is that enough times to deport you? That was after we did 50 and 25 and 10. We kept increasing it, and at no point could we get a clear agreement that there must be a point at which somebody is a clear and present danger based on driving under the influence or other offenses, and yet we could find no basis for it, only that if it was a violent felony meeting some requirement. With all due respect for today, when they've killed somebody, maimed somebody, or committed a violent felony, but they have done other things indicating their failure to be on good behavior, earlier we have missed the point because we have caused egregious harm to our cities and to our citizens because we waited too long. If you're going to kick a dog because it's simply trying to investigate whether you're carrying contraband and doing the job at a port of entry, then you've already shown that you are not fit to come into our country based on our rules. And for that reason, I oppose any changing of the name that would distract from the obvious goal that the gentleman wrote this bill for, which is to protect the law enforcement people and their service animals from the kind of attacks we saw here. And with that, I would yield back.
Mr. Chairman,
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
I move to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I don't really care about the title of the bill. It's clever to call it the Christie Noam bill because Canine Relief Act, to remind people of how cruel she was to an animal when we're talking about animal cruelty. But the real issue of this bill is not that. The real issue of this bill is that it applies penalties to people who have not been convicted. It says convicted or admitted or various other things, but they have not been convicted. It is fundamental to justice in this country that no one can be punished without being convicted of a crime. There is nothing more fundamental to the liberties of this country than the requirement of conviction of a crime. This bill and several of the other bills on the calendar today do away with that. That is a crime against the Constitution. It's a crime against liberty. We cannot have a society in which people can be convicted of a crime, sentenced to jail or to a fine or whatever, without being convicted, period. That is a fundamental thing in this country. It's been fundamental to English common law before this country. And now we're going to repeal that? That is the core issue of this bill. That's why I oppose the bill, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized.
First of all, it's good to see you all. It's been a long time since we've been together, since we were all furloughed together by the Speaker. And so it's good to be with you. I see trying to get some muscle memory back for you all. See if you have a sense of humor. I want to just set the record straight on a couple of things. We keep referring to Kristi Noem's dog as a dog, but actually it was a puppy. It was 14 months old. And that puppy had a name. Say its name. Cricket. Okay, that puppy had a name. And so if you had a couple moments, I would now like to do a spirited reading from the book by our Secretary of Homeland Security. It starts, "I hated that dog. On the way home from a hunt, the dog on the way home from a pheasant hunt was untrainable, and it went to go attack the chickens. And at that moment, I realized I had to put her down. So I grabbed a gun and led Cricket to a gravel pit. Wasn't a pleasant job, but it had to be done. And after it was over, I realized another unpleasant job needed to be done. And so I went and got the family goat and brought that to the gravel pit. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to kill that goat with one shot." So anyway, I think the point of bringing it up is, on the merits of the bill, we can debate the merits of the bill. But if we're just going to get on our high horse about animal cruelty, which I think we all agree on, by the way, I think there's unanimity here on animal cruelty. I just, want to make sure that we apply that universally. And I think that's what the gentleman from New York is just trying to remind our colleagues, who we have not seen in a while, that, the Secretary of Homeland Security also did not treat an animal in which we believe the animal should be treated. And with that, I'll yield if Mr. Raskin has any questions.
Welcome back, Mr. Moskowitz. And first of all, I think your reference to goats is completely immaterial to what we're discussing today. It's not part of the bill. Isn't that right?
There are no goats in the bill. I was meaning, not me, and she wrote this in the book, that after she shot the dog, she was like, "That was awesome, go get the goat." So.
All right, well, getting back to the substance of it, whether it's a magnificent dog like Freddie, who joins us today, or Cricket, whose reputation has obviously been besmirched by the Secretary of Homeland Security, all dogs deserve not to be treated in a cruel and capricious way. But the point here is that everything that anybody in this room would have wanted to happen happened in this case. Right after the culprit kicked Freddie, the culprit was apprehended, was arrested, was charged, and spent 3 days in jail before being removed and deported from the country. So one asks, other than the opportunity to say we agree with what happened, what are we doing here? All that's really happening is that the majority is using it as an opportunity to try to dilute this standard that is working perfectly well, which is that if you are actually convicted of such an offense, then you will be immediately removable and deportable from the country. And there's no reason to puncture that basic line, as Mr. Nadler says, in our jurisprudence. And I can't see why any of us would want to go down that road. I thank you for reminding us that animal cruelty is a serious problem across the country, Mr. Moskowitz and Mr. Goldman. And I do hope that we can all agree that what happened in this case is precisely what should have happened. We don't need to be tampering with the law at this point. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Arizona is recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. On this particular amendment, maybe we should amend this amendment to call it the Sri Thandadar bill. And so with that, I think this particular interesting article here is from the UK Daily Mail. Democratic congressman trying to impeach President Trump has been accused of abandoning over 100 dogs to starve after his company cruelly tested pharmaceuticals on them. Sri Thandadar was behind a testing lab that shut down in 2010. Months after the New Jersey lab closed, local animal rights activists alerted authorities to 118 beagles that had been left behind locked in the facility. At the time, the lab's ex-workers told USA Today they had been jumping fences at the facility to provide food and water for the dogs. Insiders claimed that even before the dogs were abandoned to starve, they had lived horrific lives in captivity and were subject to toxicology tests. I don't think they've actually had their paws on the grass. When I walked in here, it looked like they were walking on eggshells. They were kind of afraid to walk on the grass. The point is, and so, Mr. Chairman, I submit for the record this article from UK Daily Mail entitled, "Dim Congressman Sri Thanadar famed for railing against Trump carried out an unspeakable act against 118 beagles."
Without objection.
And by the way, California-based organization Defense of Animals then went back to the same site and saved 55 long-tailed macaque monkeys as well. The point is, you're trying to make a joke out of something, and the reality is what happened should not have happened, and when you try to minimize something that's serious, sometimes your humor is not really funny, it's flat. And so if we're gonna invoke names here, then I would invoke the name of your own colleague, Sri Thanadar. With that,
Would the gentleman yield?
I'll yield to the gentleman from California.
Perhaps the gentleman would consider modifying his suggestion by adding the name of Anthony Fauci, who's alleged to have presided over the torture of many more beagles and other harmless creatures, all in the name of perverted science.
Will the gentleman yield?
I would be happy to include that amendment. So Mr. Chairman, I'm making an oral amendment to change the title of the article of the underlying bill.
Without objection.
Will the gentleman yield for a question?
No.
Okay. That's totally fine.
I'm going to object to that.
Okay. There's an objection raised to the amendment offered to the amendment. All those in, we can take a roll call on all those in favor.
Who seeks recognition? Who seeks recognition?
But I want. Have you yielded back? Is the gentleman yielded back?
Yeah.
All right. Who seeks recognition? The gentleman from Tennessee seeks recognition. Your gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am a major animal rights,
we-
animal protection legislator for 40 years. I'll have a tie on today with puppy dogs, not because I knew we had this bill, because I like puppy dogs. And Freddie's a great dog. But Mr. Raskin did an excellent job in saying why we don't need this bill. I don't believe my friend Mr. McClintock responded to Mr. Raskin's argument about this being duplicitous, and I think we have a bill that I'm a sponsor of that I think might have been Jim Jordan's bill that said we should go through and eliminate laws in the code that are duplicitous and unnecessary. Mr. McClintock, you're my friend. I have great respect for you. Can you tell me why Mr. Raskin's argument's not dispositive of this bill?
Yes, as I stated in my opening subject, and by the way, Mr. Cohen, I return the compliments. I have a high degree of respect for you, which you well know, and I'm proud to say to all here. And it's very simple. It is correct that it could be interpreted as moral turpitude to have been convicted or to have admitted to such a crime. The problem is that then can trigger a lengthy legal process to determine whether or not that constitutes moral turpitude. And this cuts through all of that red tape and simply says, if you kick a 5-year-old beagle, you're not going to be allowed back in this country. No further legal proceedings are necessary. Now, you do have to either be convicted of that or admit to that. In this case, this foreign national admitted to it. But if he tried to come back in the country, he could trigger a long legal process to determine whether or not that act constituted moral turpitude. This bill makes that legal process unnecessary and simply says, you're not welcome here, go home.
Thank you, Mr. McClintock. Mr. Raskin, you would like to respond?
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. First of all, there is no judicial review of an inadmissibility determination administratively, so it's just false to say that you'd be tied up endlessly in litigation or red tape around that. I mean, I think the facts of this very case, which is the only case that's been advanced by the majority completely contradict what we just heard, because this all happened within 3 days. So where are the years or months or weeks of litigation and red tape? He was found guilty and he was removed from the country the next day. And he spent 3 days in jail. So he was not, out on the street endangering Cricket or any other dogs at that point.
Thank you, Mr. Raskin. I appreciate the discussion. I'm probably going to vote for this, even though I think Mr. Raskin's discussion is right and it's not necessary, because it's not worth our time. Kumbaya, let's do something for the puppies. And get it. Truman said, if you want a friend in Washington, get a dog.
Would the gentleman yield for 1 moment?
Sure.
Just in a last-ditch effort to dissuade you, because, at first my reaction was yours too, which is, well, this is completely redundant and duplicative, as well as duplicitous, as I think you misspoke and said as well. But, why not just let it go? It's not that big a deal. The problem is it sets a very bad precedent now where we're saying we're going to dispense with the necessity of actually trying people for crimes, and we're just going to declare them guilty of the crime, and then they can be removable or deportable, or, in the context of citizens, subject to other kinds of administrative law sanctions. And one would think that the Judiciary Committee of all places in Congress would want to resist that erosion of basic standards. Thanks.
I will reserve my judgment, but I am very much affected, as I'm sure Mr. Roy is, by his contact with Freddie.
Mr. Chairman,
What purpose, gentleman?
I want to strike the last word.
I think you're on the amendment. Go ahead. The gentleman's recognized.
Thank you.
Did you speak on the
Mr.
amendment?
Chairman, I'm
or
not going to repeat the argument that I made, that Mr. Raskin made, that this is a very terrible precedent to set, that we can penalize people without actually convicting them in a court of law. I just want to comment on something I think it was Mr. Biggs said when he was talking about cruelty to animals. And of course, cruelty to animals is terrible. But he used the name of Anthony Fauci. Now, no one has alleged that Anthony Fauci was cruel to animals. Now, true, animals were used in his medical experiments, as always is the case. You don't want to give a new drug to a person without first testing it on animals. That is part of the scientific method. It is absolutely necessary for safety for human beings. Now, Mr. Biggs mentioned someone else, I forget who it was, who he said was cruel to animals. He may well have been. But when he mentioned Anthony Fauci, he was not. He simply used animals in the proper scientific method to protect human beings. And I don't think we want to say that drugs should be tested or medical procedures should be tested first on humans without being tested first on animals. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I would just state what we're talking about here is a pretty simple question. If you've got an animal, in this case we're talking about a dog, we're talking about Freddie, in service to our country, and we've got an individual who is here as a guest, port of entry in this question, or it could be now you're talking about in the interior or otherwise, and they kick a dog. They kick this animal. They harm this animal. That we don't believe you should be a guest anymore. That's literally all we're saying. I don't think this is that complicated. Don't be an idiot, or we're going to remove you or not admit you. It's that simple. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentlelady from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't get a chance to meet Freddie, but I hope that Freddie is getting some SAG or AFTRA credits for participating in this show today. I do not support this, not because I don't support animals. In fact, I just adopted a dog 2 weeks ago from the shelter. But this really is an attempt to try and legitimize unlawful deportations and using it through the weaponization of Freddie or, using dogs as pawns because they have a soft spot in our hearts. And I've listened to some of the comments, and we have to just say, let's not pretend that this is about protecting law enforcement, because it's not. If we were really serious about protecting law enforcement, there would have been a larger outcry from my colleagues on the other side of the aisle about pardoning January 6ers who attacked Capitol Police. Last I checked, Capitol Police are members of law enforcement. There'd be less consternation about even putting a plaque up on the wall honoring those Capitol Police officers who so valiantly protected everybody up in this place. If we were really about protecting law enforcement, you would have been against cutting government funding to law enforcement that work with community-based organizations in our districts and cities and states across this country who are working to make the streets safer. If it was really about protecting law enforcement, there would have been a larger outcry about giving settlement money, government money, to folks who actually attacked Capitol Police officers. If it was really about protecting law enforcement, there would be an outcry about why the DOJ is actually taking AUSAs off cases where they and law enforcement have been working on for years to go after cartels and human traffickers. People kidnapping our children and trafficking them and prostituting them. So let's keep it real. This is a charade. It's a charade. I guess we have to get it out of our system. But this is not about protecting law enforcement. And no, Freddie shouldn't have been kicked. No dog shouldn't be kicked. But there should be a larger outcry actually about don't be an idiot, don't kick a dog. How about don't kick your wife? Don't kick a child. Don't molest a child. Don't traffic a child. How about that? No outcry about that. No outcry about that. So I don't know if I would like to yield my time, I guess, to our ranking member. If not, I yield back. Or I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from for unanimous consent.
Yeah, you see.
Gentleman from Arizona is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I enter into the record without unanimous consent. NIH shuts down Beagle Lab after 40 years of taxpayer-funded cruelty. The director of that was Anthony Fauci.
Without objection. Gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Democrats see no distinction between Kristi Noem's experience with her dog Cricket with the assault of animals that are used by law enforcement. Well, I think they'd have a point if Kristi Noem was a foreign national and she shot a law enforcement dog named Cricket. This would certainly apply to her, but none of those circumstances apply in this case. We understand that many Democrats see no problem in obstructing law enforcement when they're obstructing laws the Democrats don't like or are committed by guests of our country, whether here legally or illegally. The ranking member reminds us that one can be turned away at a point of entry administratively, and that is correct, but that doesn't apply to foreign nationals who've gotten beyond the port of entry. This makes all foreign nationals deportable if they have attacked law enforcement animals. The former ranking member objects that this doesn't require a conviction. Well, actually, it requires either a conviction or an admission of the crime. And in fact, that language is identical to the grounds for inadmissibility for crimes involving not just moral turpitude, but controlled substance offenses under the Immigration Nationality Act. Even for grounds of removability, convictions are not always required. For example, an alien can be removed for overstaying his visa, violating his non-immigrant status or condition of entry, smuggling aliens, committing marriage fraud, being a drug user or drug addict, falsely claiming U.S. citizenship, or engaging in espionage. By requiring at least an admission, this bill conforms to the pattern of other grounds of inadmissibility and removability. Here, the federal crime has clear elements that are straightforward with a criminal provision. And if an alien like Freddie's attacker had admitted to such reprehensible conduct, why can't that alien's own admission be used to show that that alien is inadmissible or deportable? I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentlelady from Vermont is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just briefly here. So we're sitting here debating the BOWOW Act. And just to be clear, you know, I'm a huge supporter of dogs. I have a dog myself. I have an incorrigible Labradoodle named Wheelie, and I love my dog. But I love my 15-year-old daughter more. And it is so shocking to me that we have not heard from any of the victims of Jeffrey Epstein in this committee, that we have, you know, I'm very happy to meet the dog here. It's actually bringing me some joy seeing the dog here in the committee. We need some joy around here. But again, I want to speak for so many of my constituents who have been so disgusted by the rhetoric that has come out of some MAGA talking heads in the last few weeks around the trafficking that was done, not just by Jeffrey Epstein, but so many well-connected, powerful men. And we have time to debate the BOWOW Act in here, and yet we have not made any time to hear directly from this women who have never received any bit of justice. And so again, I think I speak for so many of my constituents. We love our dogs, we love our animals. We have a lot of animals in Vermont. It's a rural area. But my God, we love our kids more. And it's just shocking to me that we spend time on this, on a bill that is not needed to protect animals, that I do believe is a way to legitimize unlawful deportation. We can't seem to find time to give these women a voice here in this committee. I yield back.
The gentlelady yield.
Gentlelady yields to the ranking member.
Yeah.
I'm happy to yield to the ranking member.
Thank you, Ms. Ballant. Just to recap where we are to move things along, the bill would make deportable what is already deportable. It would treat as a crime what is already a crime. It takes the superb law enforcement work of Freddie and the human beings he's attached to, the police officers. It celebrates it, and we all celebrate it. They did a great job, and it all worked. The gentlelady makes an excellent point, which is, if we're really in that desperate of search for something to do, why don't we invite the Epstein survivors in here? They're dying to talk to us. They just had a big press conference outside. They want America to hear. They're saying it's time to blow open not just the Epstein case, but all of the cases of sexual abuse of children and young people across America that's been institutionalized in so many places. I mean, if we're really in that much of a hurt to find something to do, let's do that rather than dispense of the conviction requirement. Our friend tells us that this is tied up endlessly in red tape. It takes forever. This guy was held for 3 days and was out of the country. It worked great. The police did a great job. Freddie did a great job. The law is working. So this strikes me as completely unnecessary and somewhat transparent attempt to just pile on to a situation that's already working. There's nothing that advances our freedom in doing that. There's nothing conservative about doing that. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And this is trying to fix something that's working just fine, as the only case that's been identified vividly demonstrates with the presence of Freddie. So thank you for yielding to the gentlelady, and I yield back.
Ms. Ballant, would you yield?
I will yield.
I just had a thought. The Senate's kind of not in the best of lights these days for trying to give $500,000 or more to 8 senators. Maybe they'll give $500,000 or more to each of the victims of the crimes that they're covering up.
I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentlelady from Wyoming is recognized.
I voted for that. I voted for the Lake and Riley Act.
Hey, the time belongs to the gentlelady from Wyoming. Time belongs to the gentlelady from Wyoming.
Is about illegal conduct by illegal aliens. I hope that we can remember that's what the purpose of this is. With that, I yield to Mr. Roy.
I would just take a few seconds to note that in response to one of the comments from my colleagues on the other side of the aisle about wanting to focus on the abuse of spouses or abuse of women, that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle were all up in arms about the removal and deportation of Abrego Garcia earlier this year, and Abrego Garcia beat his wife. I yield back to the gentlelady from Wyoming.
Thank you for yielding. I hesitate to get into this thing with regard to Epstein, but I want to introduce for UC an article entitled "Joe Scarborough asked Dem Rep point blank why his party didn't call for Epstein file release sooner."
Without objection.
Yeah, and so for 4 years, it was myself and a handful of Republicans that were asking that the Epstein records be released. For 4 years, we were asking for those. But the Biden administration sat on their hands and did nothing, which is why Joe Scarborough asked, well, why didn't you ask? You had control. You had all three levers. You sat on your butts and didn't say anything. Now, I've met with victims of Epstein, and they've come in, and we've heard their testimony. Not in this committee necessarily, but I've heard them in committee. And I just want to remind you that maybe when you're crabbing and fussing and complaining and carrying on, maybe you ought to look in the mirror a little bit. I'll yield back.
I'd also like to note that it was the Democrat delegate from the Virgin Islands that was not only Jeffrey Epstein's mouthpiece during congressional hearings, but was his fixer. So if you want to raise questions about Jeffrey Epstein and who has things to hide, the Democrats, as my colleague from Arizona just stated, perhaps you should look in the mirror. It is one of yours. It is one of yours. It is the Democrats that were the fixers and the attorneys for Jeffrey Epstein. So I guess that it's very difficult for me to take you seriously as you attempt to turn this into yet another attack and another way to get Donald Trump. This isn't about Donald Trump. This is about the Democrats who were aligned with Jeffrey Epstein at the very time that they knew that he was a convicted felon as a pedophile, as a pedophile. So I don't believe your hysteria. I don't trust the way that you try to turn everything into screaming about Jeffrey Epstein, because it is extremely obvious that all you're attempting to do is deflect from your failures and try to cover up the fact that it was the Democrats that enabled him.
Would the gentlelady from Wyoming yield?
I will, yes.
Yeah, in this last minute, and I wonder if the gentlelady could confirm whether what I'm about to say is correct, that it was in fact President Trump's administration in 2019 that federally indicted Epstein in July of 2019. That it was in fact the Trump administration, the first term, that was going after Maxwell and set the stage for her indictment. That it was in fact the Trump administration, along with the Oversight Committee led by Republicans, that have released tens of thousands of pages of documents this year via the appropriate path of subpoena and making sure that more information is public. And then in fact, as the gentlelady from Wyoming noted, in a hearing that I was sitting in right next door in Oversight where I was questioning Michael Cohen, literally while I personally was questioning Michael Cohen, we had a Democratic member of that committee that was texting in real time with already convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Is that correct? I yield back.
You are absolutely correct. I've watched the video. With that, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The question occurs, we can get that in a second. The question occurs on the amendment offered by the gentleman from New York, if I remember who offered that amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. No. In the opinion of the chairs, the noes have it. Question now occurs on.
Move to strike last word.
Okay, well, let me do a UC, then we'll
Good
come
deal.
to you, then ranking member. The gentleman from Arizona is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is another article. Biden administration failed to probe more than 7,300 reports of migrant child trafficking.
Without objection. I'll go to whichever one. You want to go first? Or you want-
No, please, the gentleman.
Gentlelady from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will report. Point of order reserved by the gentleman from Arizona.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a
Without objection, the
substitute.
amendment will be considered as read. The gentlelady is recognized to explain her amendment.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I sure did miss you and your
Good to see you as
excellent
well.
leadership. I had forgotten what critical things we were taking up in this committee. You know, we've entered election season because despite being gone for 7 weeks, I think it is now, the majority is once again trying to distract us from the fact that grocery prices and utility prices across the country are rising, from the fact that this administration has been protecting pedophiles, building gilded ballrooms, sending tens of billions of dollars to bail out Argentina, while refusing to extend Affordable Care Act tax credits for 22 million Americans. And the most often used tool in the Republican playbook is, surprise, blame immigrants. Blame an immigrant. Find a crime, blame an immigrant, make people deportable and inadmissible without requiring a conviction, deny them basic due process, and then just replay that, rinse and repeat, over and over again. But this is a new one even for us moving into the arena of harming animals, and I feel like we're all putting forward our animal creds, so I wish I had a picture of my beautiful 14-year-old Labradoodle, Otis, because he is, for me, part of our family like tens of millions of Americans, and I have been somebody who's championed animal welfare. So I take violence against animals seriously, but so do our immigration laws. That's what happens right now. The crime that's referenced in this bill requires someone to, quote, willfully and maliciously harm a dog or a horse. This is almost certainly already a crime involving moral turpitude, which can and did in this case render someone deportable or inadmissible from the country. In 2018, the Board of Immigration Appeals made clear that the crime of animal fighting is a crime involving moral turpitude, and that is because there is a clear intent to harm the animal. So the issue is already well covered under our immigration laws, and this bill is not necessary. Now, unnecessary bills alone are not a reason to vote no, but this bill goes further than that. Under current law, a person does not need to be convicted of a crime to be inadmissible. However, under most circumstances, you do need a conviction to be deportable. And when we talk about all the red tape, it seems to me like that's being used as an excuse to just get rid of due process. It takes too long, therefore we're not going to have due process. But once again, this bill, as has been done with so many other bills that we've been voting on in this committee, Republicans don't require someone to be convicted of the crime to be deportable from the country. That means that a green card holder who has lived here for a generation or more could be deported from the country without even being convicted of a crime. The bill was written in response to this incident where a 70-year-old man kicked a poor Customs and Border Protection agriculture detector dog at Dulles Airport. The incident was horrible. The dog was just doing his job. But that man has been pointed out over and over again in this committee, was tried and convicted in federal court in a very short period of time, removed from the country. And so my amendment is At minimum, what needs to be done is change the deportability section to require a conviction. That's what this amendment does, to require a conviction in order for the person to be removed from the country. It has never been more important for people to have their day in court. Just look at what is happening across the country as federal immigration authorities, led by Gregory Bovino, the head of CBP, inflict terror on American communities. We've seen residential communities tear gassed without a care for the very young children who have been affected. We've seen a daycare teacher with work authorization arrested at a school, inflicting irreversible damage on all the kids that she cares for. We've seen U.S. citizens brutalized by ICE and Border Patrol. The right to being innocent until proven guilty should be something that every single one of us in this committee can agree to, and a bedrock principle of fairness, due process, and the rule of law. But unfortunately, apparently, when it comes to immigrants and the people who love and support them, this administration and this committee doesn't seem to care about fairness, about due process, about the rule of law. Because under the Trump administration, federal agents have falsely accused Venezuelan soccer players, bakers, makeup artists of being Tren de Aragua members. They've attempted to deport someone for writing an op-ed, arrested U.S. citizens, falsely injured peaceful protesters, including pastors and people of faith. So we need to get back to the basics and protect the fundamental due process rights of everyone as the Constitution requires. Hope I can count on my colleagues to support this amendment. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once again, I think of that word hypocrisy, and my good friend Mr. Biggs and a few others have brought it up. So let's just go through this step by step. We have to bring the Epstein case into everything. That's okay. It is a big deal. What happened to those children and those young people was god-awful. The part I don't understand and nobody can explain to me is that my good friends on the other side keep acting as if they are the protectors of children or the protectors of these children. But the reality is that in year one of Biden's administration, they didn't do anything. Okay. But in year two, they didn't do anything. And in year three, they didn't do anything. And in year four, they didn't do anything. So if this was such a big paramount issue, if this is something they cared about so much, that bothered them so much, that hurt them so much, that attacked their moral sensibilities so much, why didn't they do anything when they had the ability and had control of it all? It begs that question. And I think we know what the answer is. So I would ask that they stop it. There are good people on both sides of the aisle that are extremely concerned about this. I, for one, I'm a sponsor of the bill to release the information from Jumpstart, many others as well. But don't take that moral, righteous path that you are above it and you are fighting for them because you weren't there for years, not for days, not for weeks, not for months, for years. Nothing happened. Secondly, animal abuse is never a good thing. And as somebody who at the state legislature, in the state senate, and the state assembly for years that I was there, written a lot of laws dealing with it, you can tell what an individual is about very often by the way they treat children, the way that they treat their elderly, and the way they treat animals, defenseless animals. And quite frankly, when an illegal person hurts an animal, yes, they should be deported. Now, some folks are maintaining that is already the case, and it's not clear, and it's ambiguous, and even Ms. Jayapal, who is very knowledgeable, said, well, almost certainly it's covered already. Well, almost certainly isn't good enough for me. Almost certainly doesn't mean certainly. It doesn't mean definitely. It doesn't mean that it absolutely is covered. So we just want to make sure if you're here illegally, and particularly if you're a bad person and a criminal to boot, you already should be deported. But if you hurt an animal beside all that, we have enough problems, quite frankly, with our own people that were born in the United States of America who are animal abusers. We don't need to illegally import them from other countries. Almost certainly isn't good enough. Let's make sure. What harm does it do, for God's sake? And then finally, it was said that we're always blaming illegal immigrants. No, we're not. We love immigrants. I'm going to go through this again. Immigrants, most of us were, our families were, our families throughout history have always brought people here. That's a good thing. It refreshes and renews America and makes us stronger. But we don't need illegal immigrants, particularly those people who are lawbreakers, even worse. They don't belong in America. Again, we have enough of our own problems and issues in America that we don't have to bring in all the issues and problems from around the world. So I know as many times as they keep saying we're blaming immigrants, I'm going to keep saying, no, we're not. We're blaming people that are on the terror watch list, or people who have committed crimes, or people who are moving drugs, or people who are part of cartels, or people who are part of gangs. Yeah, we're against them. We don't want them in America. Be mad at us. We'll stand for that any day of the week because it's the right thing to do. And with that, I'm going to call you Mr. Speaker. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized. Ranking member.
And thank you kindly, Mr. Chairman. I want to try to respond to my friend from New Jersey, both about his meditations on the Epstein case and also about the gentlelady from Washington's amendment. It seems like some of the comments of my colleagues over on this side have struck a nerve, because a lot of your colleagues, Mr. Chairman, are acting very defensive about the whole Epstein thing. And rather than talking about the survivors, the victims, this billion-dollar global child sex trafficking ring, they want to talk about Democrats. So indulge me for a moment while I try to respond to my friend from New Jersey again, because I think we went through this before we went on our 7 or 8 week Speaker Johnson ordered vacation, paid vacation, and I had even provided him the document supporting what I was saying. But Mr. Van Drew is asking what Democrats did, saying, well, our hands are not clean either. We want to simply pose as protectors of children. We're not really interested in stopping child sex abuse. We just want to strike the pose of that. Well, that's a fairly serious charge. One of the things that I offered to my friend from New Jersey before we left was all of the materials relating to a hearing that I called as the chair of the Subcommittee on Civil Rights and Civil Liberties on the Oversight Committee, along with Chairman Cummings, in July of 2019, about Alex Acosta, who was the U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of Florida, who later became Donald Trump's Secretary of Labor. And we sent him a letter. This hearing will examine your actions as U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida in authorizing a non-prosecution agreement for Jeffrey Epstein, as well as the finding by a federal court that you violated the Crime Victims' Rights Act by keeping this non-prosecution agreement secret from the many victims of Mr. Epstein's crimes. Your testimony is critical, and so on. We had an entire hearing on this. So to the charge that somehow we weren't interested and we weren't doing anything, I say false. It has been debunked, and Mr. Van Drew, if you'd like, I can give you the exact same documents I gave you before, if you'd like. Now, let me say this about the Biden administration. I'll yield to you as soon as I have a moment, Mr. Van Drew. You know, it wasn't until Donald Trump that we associated what the Department of Justice did with the president who was in office. We considered the Department of Justice an independent law enforcement branch, and yet nonetheless, we see imputed to Joe Biden what is the reality under Donald Trump, which is he makes all the calls there. I mean, he literally tells them, oh, I want you to go out and investigate Bill Clinton now, or Larry Summers now, just investigate the Democrats, and they do it. And our colleagues who are on the Judiciary Committee of the U.S. House of Representatives don't say a word about it. That's astounding to me. But in any event, okay, you want to view it your way? Let's view it your way. What happened under the Biden Justice Department, under President Biden? In 2021, they prosecuted Ghislaine Maxwell. They successfully prosecuted her, and she was convicted, and in the courtroom of Judge Allie Nathan of the Southern District of New York, she was sentenced to 20 years in prison for engaging in human trafficking, child sex trafficking, solicitation, procurement across state lines, and so on. That was under the Biden Justice Department. So to Mr. Van Drew's claim President Biden didn't do anything, if you want to attribute what happened at DOJ under him to him, he certainly did do something. They convicted Ghislaine Maxwell. Then she engaged in a whole appeals process. The gentleman will remember in 2022, the Department of Justice fought that for an entire year and continued to fight it even while they continued the investigation. Well, then what did your guy do? He got into office and they summoned all the prosecutors, all the investigative files, and they killed the investigation. Despite the fact that this is a more than $1 billion international child sex trafficking conspiracy. They killed the investigation. Nothing to see here. You guys were here when Kash Patel showed up and he said, oh, well, there was nobody else implicated. Nobody else implicated with more than 1,000 victims, hundreds and hundreds of victims. These people going there, exploiting and abusing these girls and these young women, 4 banks filing suspicious activity reports after the death of Jeffrey Epstein. Afterwards, they decided to file these, saying there were more than $1 billion. Yes, I'll yield to my friend.
Just a quick point of clarification. Do you know when the Maxwell case was indicted? Was that Biden or Trump?
It was under Trump. Again, I'd like to view the Department of Justice as an independent law enforcement entity. So yes, that was pointed out before. He was
It needs to be. May I have one more question?
Time of the gentleman has expired. I can yield to you for a question that you can yield then to Mr. Raskin. So I'll recognize the gentleman's time has expired. He yields back. Gentleman from North Carolina is recognized.
Mr. Raskin, I'm going to ask you a question. Just
Please.
In terms of this whole mantra, one of the concerns that I've vocalized to you is the need to protect truly innocent people in this disclosure, in this effort. And I welcome your acumen and your insights. Is it possible to have a mechanism where people who are truly bystanders, the little men, the little women in New York, in Florida, wherever, to prevent them from being released and forever tarnished in this effort? And I welcome the insights you have.
No, and I thank you for the seriousness of your question and also for your great experience as a real prosecutor. As I understand the Oversight Committee's subpoena and what the chair has worked out with Mr. Garcia, that names of victims will be redacted. So clearly they've got the power to do that. There are other names that have already come forward, Lawrence Summers or Bill Clinton. Presumably they can take care of themselves. Mr. Summers has already said he's deeply ashamed, and he ought to be deeply ashamed of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. These are the kinds of things that should have come out a long time ago. But I'm with you. You know, you are somebody who should be involved because of your many years as a prosecutor in seeing to it that people are truly innocent whose names just show up.
Sometimes the best criminals are the hardest to catch, and they embed themselves with innocent people to make it hard to catch. And in this investigation, over the number of years, I'm worried about the waiter, the waitress, the bellman, the cab driver, the chauffeur, whoever it may be. And if we just willy-nilly release all the files, those are the people that I'm most concerned about. Larry Summers can defend himself. But it's the people who are 20, 25, 30 that don't have the resources of a Larry Summers that I'm...
And I hear you. I believe the Massey Kana bill includes such protections. I'll find the language for you in there.
Well, there is one concerning piece there that says social embarrassment is not a reason to withhold the information. And I get the spirit behind that language, but in my opinion, it's way too broad, because if there is someone who's innocent, they would not only be embarrassed, they'd be forever tarnished. And I believe that would be a reason to withhold those names. And again, I would love to talk about a mechanism to do that at some point.
I'm happy to look at the language with you to see that it's
Would the gentleman from North Carolina yield?
Yes, I will yield to Mr. Roy.
Yeah, I just want to echo the sentiments. And the gentleman from North Carolina, I've been having this conversation over time about our wish and desire to be able to amend language or be able to tweak it in order to ensure that that safeguard is in place, because I too have the same concern that it could be overbroad in terms of what it might mean for an innocent individual. And I would just note that, and I mean this respectfully, because I think that was a good back and forth and agreement, that the ranking member used an example out of the Oversight Committee in terms of redactions. I agree. I do think that there was a lot of good faith effort, there to do that the appropriate way. But we're talking about here, Congress is now statutorily, we're coming out and we're saying do X, right? We're going inserting ourselves into the prosecutorial function. For all of the politics aside, our general agreement that we want the maximum transparency, but then that raises questions, right? We're not sticking ourselves into the prosecutorial function for every case. There are tens of thousands of cases right now for the Department of Justice in every United States Attorney's office. We're doing it for this one because of the egregious crimes and because of the political nature of it. But that raises questions of Congress saying, hey, release X, and then what happens? What happens with grand jury secrecy? What happens with victims that might be the innocent bystanders that the gentleman from North Carolina raises? So I would hope that in our conversations, we would, knowing that this is likely going to be voted off the floor this afternoon, that we're having those conversations and directing, hopefully, the Senate to at least address those concerns in a thoughtful and hopefully bipartisan way, because I would hope we all agree we would not want that to occur for the truly innocent individual that might be affected by it. I yield back to the gentleman from North Carolina.
Mr. Raskin, do you want to say something?
I don't even remember whose time it is anymore.
It's the gentleman from North Carolina.
No, again, just to say, look, the reason that the victims are in town is because there's been such a massive cover-up for so long that they want to see that the government is going to come clean and that we're on their side. The point you raise is a significant point about the rule of law, and we should figure out a way to embody it in there if the existing protections in the legislative language are not sufficient.
Thank you. I yield to Mr. Van Drew.
Thank you, gentleman from North Carolina. Real quickly, I understand the ranking member's point, but being concerned about a plea deal and Alex Acosta is far from revealing the thousands of pages, the thousands of people that may not been involved, and I don't mean the innocent ones. None of that was done. Let's not conflate those two issues. You had one subcommittee hearing and one issue that was relatively minor compared to what this whole huge issue is and is about. I yield back to the gentleman.
I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Gentlelady from, I think, Pennsylvania was first, then we'll go to the gentlelady from Texas. We don't have someone on our side. Gentlelady's recognized.
Thank you. I mean, talk about conflating the issues. There is an outstanding subpoena from the Oversight Committee, which has not been complied with the White House. We don't have to have a vote. The White House could release the Epstein files today if it chose to, instead of engaging in a White House cover-up. But I think, Mr. Raskin, you had some further remarks, so I'll yield to you.
Thank you for yielding, Ms. Scanlon. Just to complete that chronology, and then I do want to say something about the gentlelady from Washington's amendment. When the Trump administration entered this year, they collected all of the files, all of the information, and all of the existing investigations, and they killed them. They said it's over. And so when the president said the other day, well, I want the Department of Justice to reopen the investigation into certain Democrats, into Clinton and Summers and so on. Of course, he was countermanding his own order, which said there was nothing to see there, but now he's saying, oh, there's something to see there, but I'm going to apply this utterly unconstitutional partisan lens to it and say, I just want an investigation of the Democrats, which, by the way, is something he shouldn't necessarily wish for because he was a Democrat during that period, shamefully, for that decade-long period when he was best friends with Jeffrey Epstein, and a lot of this was taking place. In any event, let's go to the gentlelady's amendment, which makes all the sense in the world. All she's saying is if we're going to pass Freddie's bill, but let's restore the criminal conviction requirement. I asked my staff to pull for me if they would, and of course they got it immediately. All of the offenses that require a conviction before deportation from the country, okay? And I don't even know if I got time to go through all of them. It's basically, A to Z, attempt to commit an aggravated felony, alien smuggling, bribery of a witness, burglary, child pornography, commercial bribery, conspiracy to commit an aggravated felony, counterfeiting, crime of violence, destructive devices, drug offenses, failure to appear, and so on and so forth. Okay, so you asked the question, well, what's the big deal? Yeah, we know it's redundant. They already got Freddie's kicker, and he was deported and spent 3 days in jail. We already took care of that. He had to pay his fine. But what's the big deal? We want to have, a piece of legislation in Freddie's name. The problem is that are you going to pull the rug out from beneath dozens of these criminal offenses where a conviction is required? Do we really want to start letting unelected government bureaucrats, people in the executive branch, just describe somebody as a kicker or a terrorist or a drug smuggler. We're going to be dealing with a lot of legislation like that. This is the Judiciary Committee. We are the people who should be focused on due process, right? Everybody has a right to due process. For some people, due process isn't even enough. I mean, you think about President Trump, who has dozens of criminal felonies to his name now after he was arrested, well, not arrested, but charged, indicted, prosecuted, convicted. He had the presumption of innocence. He had unanimous grand jury requirement. He had the right to cross-examine witnesses. He had the full panoply of due process protections. And still he says he wasn't treated fairly. How about somebody who you're going to dispense with all of the due process requirements and somebody's just going to say they're guilty? Or we think you admitted it because the way you responded to our question. I mean, come on. Let's not think so short-term and in such a partisan way. Let's think about the rules of the game that we want going forward. So I'm definitely voting no. I hope all of our colleagues who are interested in due process will not get us on this slippery slope. And I thank my friend from Pennsylvania for yielding, and I yield back to you. Ms. Gamlin, I yield back to you.
Thank you, and I would yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from California is recognized. And we'll come to
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's the whole point of the bill. If they deny the charge, that's a whole other matter. If they deny the charge, then this bill wouldn't apply. It only applies to the individual who's already admitted to the offense. You know, the gentlelady, I think correctly, states the effect of this bill. A green card holder who's been here for years can be deported under this bill if they've admitted to assaulting a law enforcement animal. That's the whole point. Without this law, that same green card holder, again, a guest in this country, could remain in the United States indefinitely while litigating whether or not that act constituted an act of moral turpitude. What the gentlelady proposes is that even if the alien has admitted or even boasted of kicking a law enforcement animal, they can remain here indefinitely while arguing whether or not that constitutes a crime of moral turpitude for them to be removed from the country. The gentlelady says, well, don't worry. This will almost certainly be held grounds for removal eventually. It's that qualifier, almost. That's the problem. Kicking a beagle shouldn't almost certainly be removable. It should be certainly removable if that beagle is acting in a law enforcement capacity. Yes, in this case, Freddie's attacker was stopped at a port of entry. He was quickly ejected, but here's the problem. If he then crosses the border illegally, takes up illegal residency, applies for asylum, he cannot be deported until a potentially lengthy and expensive court process to determine whether or not that act that he's already admitted to meets the legal standard of moral turpitude. And that's what this bill fixes. If you've already admitted to this act and you're a guest in our country to begin with, well, you can't come back, and if you do, you can't stay. Yield back.
Well said. The gentleman yields back. The gentlelady from Texas is recognized.
Thank you so much. I just love that we care so much more about dogs' lives than we do actual lives, but I'm going to continue on. I want to make sure that I enter this UC, which is one of the reasons that we are a bit skeptical of any immigration, quote unquote, enforcement laws that y'all are trying to pass. This UC is from The Guardian. It says, immigrants with no criminal record now largest group in ICE detention. You know, I listened to Mr. Van Drew.
Without objection.
Thank you so much. I listened to Mr. Van Drew, who I do respect. And he went on and on and on about how this is about the bad guys. And I will be honest with you and tell you that when it came down to the election, there were a lot of people who really believed that the Republicans and the president were all about getting the bad guys out. People truly believed your words, but your actions are not matching up because I've got the receipts showing that they are not matching up. And so call us a little paranoid in believing that the hypocrisy may continue to come from across the aisle. Speaking of hypocrisy, I do want to point out, since we're talking about Jeffrey Epstein, because we couldn't talk about Epstein before. If y'all recall, we were gone for about 2 months because we couldn't talk about Jeffrey Epstein. And now everybody wants to act as if they want to have like a real honest conversation about the victims and the survivors and everybody else. Where was this conversation a long time ago? And I know that y'all love to go back and say that Joe Biden didn't do it. You know, Joe Biden is blamed for everything. Joe Biden didn't do anything, and it was Joe Biden's fault, and why wasn't Joe Biden? Joe Biden didn't campaign on it. I just want to be clear. If y'all can run me the tape, then run me the tape. But you know, when you campaign and you go out and you make a promise, then we evaluate whether or not you actually meet your promises. So listen, this was rope that y'all decided to hang yourselves with because the president campaigned on the Epstein files while we were campaigning on things such as affordability. We were campaigning on the things that now people are complaining about, right? Because of the tariffs and the fact that you guys won't say anything and tell the president, hey, sir, tariffs are taxes. We as Republicans, we usually don't like taxes. And guess what? That's gonna make everything unaffordable. So now he's gonna be our big savior and he is gonna reduce the price of foods because he is the guy that actually increased the price of foods. So listen, if you can have this honest conversation about Epstein now, let's just go ahead with this lame duck president and be honest about everything that the American people care about. They care about affordability. They care about the fact that literally people are starving in this country because we have 42 million people, and I don't remember any one of you during that almost 2-month break deciding to go on faux news or any other news outlet and say, you know what, it is wrong to have 42 million people that are relying on $6 a day to eat, and we have the money because somehow our president was able to find under the couch cushion, the one that JD wasn't sitting on, under the couch cushion, he was able to find 40, how much did he find to send to Argentina? 40, there we go. 40 billion to send to Argentina. But those emergency funds, he couldn't find them emergency funds so that Americans could eat. So listen, if y'all are gonna be honest and talk about Epstein right now, let's be honest about everything that is causing y'all to lose real bad. Did y'all see the election results on November 4th? It didn't go very well. So let's just start having honest conversations so that hopefully some of y'all in some of these tight seats, maybe y'all can get reelected and we can just work together.
Would
Ms.
the
Crockett.
gentlelady yield?
What, both of y'all want? Y'all want some action? I'll go to Texas first.
You know,
make it fast, Lance.
I want to just thank you for admitting that all of our problems are Joe Biden's fault. It's nice to hear you say that. I also remind everyone we're still on the original bill about the dogs, and I'd like for us to stay on topic because, you know, Ms. Crockett, you may be all bark and no bite, but we're not going to roll over. And Ms. Jayapal thinks that we're going to lie down while Mr. Moskowitz goes and fetches amendments. But I hope that she'll put this amendment down because that dog won't hunt, and I'll yield back.
Will the gentlelady yield for a question? No.
I was going to
I mean, that's quite something. That's quite something. Listen, you know, let's be clear that the only reason people want to have the Epstein conversation today is because 2 days ago, your boss, the guy in the White House without whom you don't do anything, told you that he was going to lose on this vote, and so all of a sudden he released you all to vote for it and talk about it. Give me a break. Like, let's be real. I have a unanimous consent request to enter into the record, Mr. Chairman. Homeland Security missions falter and focus on deportations. Under President Trump, an agency intended to keep Americans safe has diverted resources from combating child abuse, trafficking, and terrorism.
Without
That's
objection.
what we should be focusing on,
Without
not
objection.
this.
Without objection.
Yield back.
And I don't know if those were dad jokes or dog jokes. I don't know. It was like
I think those-
kind of both.
I think they were
both.
downloaded
They were
from
both.
the internet or something.
They were good.
Yeah.
It was a good attempt.
Okay.
It was a good attempt.
Which side? We're on this side. The question occurs on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from Washington. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it, and the amendment is not agreed to.
We have a recorded vote, please. Yeah.
The ranking member requesting a recorded vote. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Jordan?
No.
Mr. Jordan votes no. Mr. Isa? Mr. Biggs? Mr. Biggs votes no. Mr. McClintock? Mr. McClintock votes no. Mr. Tiffany? Mr. Massey? Mr. Roy? Mr. Roy votes no. Mr. Fitzgerald? Mr. Fitzgerald votes no. Mr. Klein? Mr. Klein votes no. Mr. Gooden? Mr. Gooden votes no. Mr. Van Drew? Mr. Van Drew votes no. Mr. Nels? Mr. Moore? Mr. Moore votes no. Mr. Kiley? Mr. Kiley votes no. Ms. Hageman? Ms. Lee? Ms. Lee votes no. Mr. Hunt? Mr. Hunt votes no. Mr. Fry? Mr. Grothman? Mr. Knott? Mr. Knott votes no. Mr. Harris? Mr. Onder? Mr. Onder votes no. Mr. Schmidt? Mr. Gill? Mr. Gill votes no. Mr. Baumgartner? Mr. Raskin? Mr. Raskin votes aye. Mr. Nadler? Mr. Nadler votes aye. Ms. Lofgren? Mr. Cohen? Mr. Cohen votes aye. Mr. Johnson? Mr. Johnson votes aye. Mr. Swalwell? Mr. Liu? Ms. Jayapal? Ms. Jayapal votes aye. Mr. Correa? Mr. Correa votes aye. Ms. Scanlon? Ms. Scanlon votes aye. Mr. Neguse? Ms. McBath? Ms. Ross? Ms. Ross votes aye. Ms. Ballant? Ms. Ballant votes aye. Mr. Garcia? Mr. Garcia votes aye. Ms. Kamlager-Dove? Ms. Kamlager-Dove votes aye. Mr. Moskowitz? Mr. Moskowitz votes aye. Mr. Goldman? Ms. Crockett? Ms. Crockett votes aye. Mr. Nels votes no. Ms. Hageman? Ms. Hageman votes no. Mr. Chairman, there are 13 ayes and 17 noes.
The amendment is not agreed to. The question now is on the adoption of the amendment in the nature of a substitute. This will be followed immediately by a vote on favorably reporting the bill. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The question is on favorably reporting the bill. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the bill is ordered reported favorably to the House. Members will have.
Could I have a recorded vote, please, Mr. Chair?
You're supposed to say that before I read that
I'm
whole
sorry.
paragraph. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Jordan?
Yes.
Mr. Jordan votes yes. Mr. Issa? Mr. Issa?
Yes.
Mr. Issa votes yes. Mr. Biggs? Mr. Biggs votes aye. Mr. McClintock? Mr. McClintock votes aye. Mr. Tiffany? Mr. Massey? Mr. Roy? Mr. Roy votes aye. Mr. Fitzgerald? Mr. Fitzgerald votes aye. Mr. Klein? Mr. Klein votes aye. Mr. Gooden? Mr. Gooden votes aye. Mr. Van Drew? Mr. Van Drew votes yes. Mr. Nels? Mr. Moore? Mr. Moore votes aye. Mr. Kiley? Mr. Kiley votes aye. Ms. Hageman? Ms. Hageman votes aye. Ms. Lee? Ms. Lee votes aye. Mr. Hunt? Mr. Hunt votes aye. Mr. Fry? Mr. Grothman? Mr. Knott? Mr. Knott votes aye. Mr. Harris? Mr. Onder? Mr. Onder votes aye. Mr. Schmidt? Mr. Gill? Mr. Gill votes yes. Mr. Baumgartner? Mr. Raskin? Mr. Raskin votes no. Mr. Nadler? Mr. Nadler votes no. Ms. Lofgren? Mr. Cohen? Mr. Cohen votes no. Mr. Johnson? Mr. Johnson votes no. Mr. Swalwell? Mr. Liu? Ms. Jayapal? Ms. Jayapal votes no. Mr. Correa? Mr. Correa votes no. Ms. Scanlon? Ms. Scanlon votes no. Mr. Neguse? Ms. McBath? Ms. Ross? Ms. Ross votes no. Ms. Ballant? Ms. Ballant votes no. Mr. Garcia? Mr. Garcia votes no. Ms. Kamlager-Dove? Ms. Kamlager-Dove votes no. Mr. Moskowitz? Mr. Goldman? Ms. Crockett? Ms. Crockett votes no. Mr. Nels votes yes.
Clerk will report.
Mr. Chairman, there are 18 ayes and 12 noes.
The ayes have it, and the bill is ordered to be reported favorably to the House. Members will have 2 days to submit views. Without objection, the bill will be reported as a single amendment in the nature of a substitute incorporating all adopted amendments, and staff is authorized to make technical and conforming changes pursuant to